Hey there, you guys, and welcome to Real Estate Divas. Today we're going to be talking about religion and how it affects real estate right after this. Hey there, you guys. Welcome back to Real Estate Divas. I'm Jaylee Thompson with Real Estate Reformation and Texel Real Estate.
And I'm Kristen Gerst with Capricorn Mortgage.
And today we have Zulikha Hussain.
Hussain.
Zulikha Hussain. I pronounce it wrong every time, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Hussain. Zulikha Hussain, and she is going to be telling us a little bit about, we're going to go from start to finish, kind of walking y'all through the process of whether you're working with the Muslim community or you're also you're Muslim and looking for different opportunities out there of how to get financed and purchase or invest.
And we'd like to point out that this works not only for realtors who are trying to build their client base and maybe get more Muslim clients, but also it works for owner finance investors who might be looking to offer owner financing to potential Muslim buyers.
Yes. So just
welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Zulikha Hussain, and like you said, because a lot of the time the people do tend to pronounce it inaccurately, especially with commercial agents that I was working a lot with over the last couple of years. So they branded a name for me, LadyZ, and so I actually took with it, and so a nickname I just sort of developed over the years is LadyZ.
Which I love that.
I
That's
do
her
too.
email.
It's totally perfect.
That's her business structure, LadyZ.
Well, I am a proud American Muslim, and thank you so much for having me over. And I think this is a great segment to help individuals that are working with Muslims and Muslim realtors that may not be aware of certain other Islamic institution mortgages that are available that they can offer to their clients. It's interesting that I was speaking earlier to a guidance residential regional manager, and Muhammad was saying, you know, we have non-Muslims who also do take our loans, so it was nice to hear that. Just to give a little bit of background to your viewers, Muslims follow the religion of Islam. Islam is based on the Quran and the last prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his sunnah, the way he lived, and a lot of Muslims strive to be as good and of a life that he led and had the characteristic traits that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had.
And is it true that the Prophet actually borrowed and lent money later on in his life?
I'm not a scholar, so I am not going to be able to comment on that. I wish I had probably taken a couple extra courses of the seerah of the Prophet to be able to tell you a yes or a no. Precisely, I do not know the answer to that, so I apologize.
So says Kristen.
He was. So my apologies for throwing that one out of left
yeah,
field.
that wasn't in our notes.
No, it is actually because some people believe that it's completely forbidden, and
it is. So there are two verses in the Quran, one that's part of chapter 2 in Surah Baqarah that talks about riba. And riba is forbidden, and riba is known as interest. And so, yes, if you are borrowing money and making money off of money, that is definitely forbidden. Now, there is a vast variety of Muslims that follow Islam, right? So you have the very orthodox, conservative, moderate, and then liberal. So, and each one of them may have a scholar that they like to talk to or a teacher. So it could vary on the gray areas that they feel. Some may really feel like riba was talking about usury and usury alone and not necessarily a low interest rate. And that individual may go for a conventional loan. However, as we can talk about a little bit, the conventional loans that we had, the past housing crisis and was, you know, pretty much bedrocked on greed and lack of transparency, which is the exact opposite in Islam and the Islamic financing laws. You have to make sure that you're as transparent as possible and that you're not adding any kind of riba into the transaction. And so most of the time you'll notice the way that it's conducted, you'll have a partnership, and then that partnership will become more of a diminished partnership as the individual borrower starts getting more of the house. And so that's a transaction that is conducted.
So whenever we're talking about, so before we dive into like the different options that I know the Muslim community has in the Muslim banking systems and the products that they've put out there specifically for the Muslim community, but open to just about any borrower out there. What are some of the things, I know you do commercial and you do residential real estate. Let's start with residential. So what are some of the things that usually kind of happen whenever you first get a Muslim client, before we ever get to the purchase point? What are some of the things that might be different that some realtors might need to know about?
Well, I think the major difference is because a Muslim client may have needs depending on if they're with one in-laws or their mother or several generations living together. I think we need to, as any realtor with any client would do, is sit down and see what their exact needs are, what kind of bedrooms, and so all of that's going to be pretty standard. But then you come down to, well, if this is, and I guess the saying, never judge the book by its cover. Just because they're maybe wearing a headscarf doesn't necessarily define them as an Orthodox Muslim. And in other incidents it may.
Kind of like, any
individual.
Yeah, religious views. If you've got so many, it spans, quite the gamut as far as whether it's conservative or liberal.
Number one rule, if somebody shows up with a headscarf, do not assume that they will not go for a conventional mortgage and they're not already
and that
qualified.
Or that they're going to be very rigid.
Or that they don't speak English.
Well, and that community is so tight, like you mentioned, very close-knit community and very family oriented. So the multi-generational is very common.
It is. It's one of our basic Islamic principles. You need to take care of your elderly. You need to take care of your mom. It's super important to do, the right with your parents. And some may not feel the need to stay with their children. They may want to be in a 55+ community. So again, knowing
not
what the
everybody's
needs.
the same. Yeah.
Right. So
communication.
Exactly. And then there may be some little nuances that are really important to know. Whereas I came across a client who really needed to consult with the scholar before they would execute a contract. And with today's crazy market, you got to put in a couple of hundred contracts for one client some days. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but there has been times where we've done 20.
It feels like 100 contracts by the time you get done with the day. Yeah.
So it's like at least 15, 20, and at least with one client by the time they win a bid. And so there was a process specifically with one Muslim client, and they needed to consult with their specific scholar to ensure that the house had a positive energy, that the house itself facing, ideally most Muslims like the front door to face northeast. However, if it's not, what elements within the house that can be productive for them. And I think mostly a lot of what I have personally experienced with clients is they need the house to have positive energy. And sometimes we can even feel that going into a home, doesn't
Absolutely.
have enough light or whatnot. And for them, it may be another step level where making any major decisions and buying a property, a house in today's market, and
right.
It's a major decision, and some would like to consult.
When you say scholar, just for those who don't know, who is that exactly when they say they're going to go and consult with a scholar?
So a religious, qualified, certified imam, or an individual who's had years of education and training in the life of the Prophet, the Quran, the Sirah. The understanding they have is very vast and detailed. 100 times better than mine.
And do they go and consult with them, consult and say, we're going to start looking for a home? and let them know ahead of time, because I would assume, like we talked before the show, like these scholars must be super busy, like with the amount of, you know,
Yeah,
offers that you're putting in, and I'm interested in this house, like,
Do they need to visit each one?
yeah.
Can they do it via Zoom?
Yeah, you know what? They don't have to visit. It's mainly the individual is describing the home, letting them know the location and what their personal circumstances are, and based on that, the guidelines are being provided to them. And so you know, it's not a process that's that difficult or lengthy. It's more or less pretty fast and quick. And yes, they're notified in advance, and sometimes even notified. Should I be doing this right now? Is this a good time for me to do this? Or
So
should I
in
wait?
effect, they're a life coach.
I would think so. And you know, quite frankly, I have several. I joined a fellowship in 2012 called Bawa Muhyiddin's Fellowship in Philadelphia. I am becoming more of a Sufi. I'm a Sufi student right now and learning more. I'm a Sunni Muslim, but I am trying to be more Sufi. And Sufism is more of, you know, probably enhancing your character, having a much more spiritual understanding of Islam beyond just the religious practices or traditions that we tend to do, which I still have to, you know,
Adhere
sort of
to.
adhere
Yes,
to,
yes.
and still need to brush up on a daily basis. So I also go to Sheikh Noor Kabani. He's off of SufiLife.com. I absolutely adore and love him. And he's actually a doctor of medicine, and then also is a scholar. And another friend of mine introduced me 12 years ago to Jalaluddin, and you know, he's on my WhatsApp. So it's not so necessary that there, you know, there's several, and each of us may have several that we love to talk to, follow. Otherwise, that one individual would be impossible to
Absolutely.
locate.
Well, because you say scholar, and I think just one priest. There's just one. You know, I mean, when you think about Christianity, there's one guy. He's in charge, and then you've got the,
Yes.
you know, you've got a couple of ones that are
Well, you got assistants.
Yeah.
Assistant ministers,
Anyway,
assistant
but
priests.
yeah. So there's you
Well,
know,
clergymen and
yeah,
and
clergymen
other
and stuff. Yeah,
individuals that
yeah,
have
and
had,
there are
Or
counselors
you could go
and
to the
such.
sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? There are scholars that are sisters in the community as well. So just your preference.
So as far as the process, whenever you're talking about, I'm a realtor, I just took on a Muslim client, and they have consulted, and we're going to go out and look, and you know, the north facing, are there any other things besides consulting with their scholar before we put in an offer that
I would have to imagine there is. I mean, regardless, they should have some idea of how they're going to finance this, be it cash, be it borrowing from a Muslim lender, needing to find owner finance, or willing to go conventional. They would have to have some idea of how they're going to do that. And I would assume in this market, any realtor worth their salt would want to see that pre-approval letter.
Without the pre-approval letter, I'm, you know, we're not really
Going to go
out
and looking. Yeah, I'm not looking at any houses.
I wanted to
yeah.
be as-
And you want to
Yeah.
be as polite and nice and
Yeah.
transparent as
Have
you
you
can
spoken
there.
to
That's
somebody?
part of the religion.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and you have to. But at the same time, you also don't need your own time wasted.
And that's a very good point you bring up. I'm very clear cut with my customers, my clients, and all my clients eventually become family or friends. Like that's how I start with them is, look, you know, by the time this process is done and I get you into a home, we're going to be really close friends.
Yeah, yeah. We're going to be doing dinner together.
Yes, and that's the biggest compliment is when they invite you to their housewarming and then recommend you to their friends and families and neighbors. It's just, you know, that's just like the cream of the crop. That's, I think, the reason I'm in business for, is helping other people. And that's a basic tenet of our Islamic teachings, is to help people and do it sincerely. And like I was telling you before the show, I have many sleepless nights because in today's market, the first thing I will tell a client, Muslim or non-Muslim, is look, we need to be prepared that yes, we're going to be bidding over our understanding the market. So most people will come in thinking, oh, we're going to get the best deal. I don't know if there's such a thing as a best deal anymore. It's what are your requirements? What are you?
What can you do? What can you bring to the table to make your offer the most appealing? Because it's getting it under contract.
And
that's the goal these days.
And with Islamic financing, they need to have a pre-approval letter and know their limit. And so when we're going in a bidding war with pretty much every home, we know where we have to stop. We know our threshold. And so there's no disappointment, there's no crying and discomfort after the fact that we lost that contract, because we already know where our numbers need to be. And I think that's a very practical approach in today's market, whether you're a Muslim client or non-Muslim client or a Muslim realtor or not. It's just sitting down there and putting those
expectations in line.
Thank you.
And calling out the elephant in the corner.
Yes.
Yes, and I think the most important part that I always tell my clients is, what is your monthly number? Because sometimes, depending on if they decide to go conventional, I mean, in Islam, you're not supposed to judge anybody. We recognize riba is a sin. And like my scholar said, please don't go on that show and tell people another lie and create another sin for yourself.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're absolutely right. So practical, Islam is very practical. People get concerned about, oh, the Sharia compliant, oh, what does that mean? They're just rules and regulations that you're supposed to be bounded by. Islam is telling us what we need to get accomplished in our daily life. So I want to make that fairly clear. I'm not a scholar, but when I did consult with my scholar, it's very important to put it out there. Yes, there is a council in Europe, and they had put out a couple of months ago, or almost a year now, that yes, if you don't have any other choice, and some Sharia compliant, mortgage lenders are not in every state. So if you don't have a choice, you don't have an option, and there's a necessity. Housing is a necessity, it's a need. And you can't ask your mom to go up to the second floor in her 70s in an apartment complex. So you have to look at each individual situation, and that's why you have so many consultants. With 25% of the mankind today being Muslim, I think there's plenty of scholars out there to consult with.
Yes.
So riba, or interest, just so people aren't confused, is a sin, and it is prohibited.
Yes.
However, it does happen.
Yes, it does, and
really, I've got to be honest. I mean, I remember when 7% was considered free money. That was when I got out of college, and that was my student loans were at 7% interest.
7 and 8% was really common. I
It
mean,
was
now
free.
it's so, yeah.
In 2005, I was paying 9 to 12% for a commercial loan, and that was a good price.
And some of the mortgage loans were housing mortgage loans around 1998 and 2000, or was it 87, 89? I'm trying to remember the dates. I was pretty young back then, but I think they were pretty high too.
They were.
They were.
10,
They were.
12%.
In 06 and 07, I had 30-year fixed at 7.5% for my investment loans, and I was ecstatic. So when we're talking about now being down at 2.5%, 3%, 4%, it's really free money.
But yet it is still money that's making money.
It is.
Instead of making money off a product. So unfortunately,
It is
it's
prohibited,
still
and it's still
prohibited,
it is still a sin.
Right,
But if you talk to your scholar,
Pending.
that there are plenty of, and there are no other options, then they may consent or approve of the conventional route.
Yeah, and all kidding aside, honestly, Islam being so practical, it's important to know the individual circumstances. So if that individual circumstances is a serious need, and a dire need, like we were talking about, where you have to take care of your mom, that's a requirement in Islam. And so
one outweighs the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah,
so
one need outweighs the other. Let me ask you, and you may or may not know this, but whenever we're talking about using the Muslim banking system, do they require, is it kind of the same as conventional, whereas it has to appraise, or is it strictly based on what they've decided you can spend up to this point, and they will lend that amount of money on this house?
So yes, it's going to have to be at market value, so it will have to appraise.
So if it was like $5,000,
This
if
is-
the appraisal came in and it's under $5,000 or $10,000 under what contract price would be, then it would either have to be renegotiated or that client still has to come out of pocket. Same as
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's and you have to understand with Islamic law, it's super important that both individuals in that transaction is having good intention. Everything in Islam is based on your intention. So you're going into the contract fully understanding all of the nuances of the contract, and also promising to pay back the loan, and the lender promising to work with you, because life can happen and under circumstances things may change later on. However, going in to a product that may not appraise puts both of them at a high
jeopardy.
risk. So to eliminate
So,
that.
and I find this interesting, and I'm wondering where this is going to go, or what you're going to tell me is the answer here. But from a Muslim bank and a Muslim mortgage lender, especially in today's market, when yes, you are possibly going to have, definitely at the top of the market, you are going to come in at the top of appraisal, but also more likely above appraisal. Are Muslim customers in that case expected to, because they're not being charged any interest, I'm assuming, they're just charging up, right? They're having to raise that price up to then divide their payments equally to get a 0% interest, right? They are taking a profit because the bank buys the property first
Correct.
and then sells it to them at, I could only fathom a guess on what the percentage would be
So
above that.
because it's divided, so in a conventional loan, when you get a $400,000 home, by the time you're done paying it in 30 years, you have what, spent maybe
Twice
times
as much.
Yeah.
Twice as much. Well,
At
three
least
times as much.
Three times.
three
Yeah.
Yeah.
times. So, so you can imagine the concept is, well, you already know if you don't sell that property in, within that time frame of 30 years, and you go to the end of the term, you're going to pay 3 times the amount. So I guess you could pretty much relate that this one is not technically 3 times, it may be 2. It just depends on the contract itself. And I would probably tell you, a guidance residential counselor, we have 2 Islamic institutions that are local. One is right here in Plano, UIF, and then there's another one, guidance residential, that's in Irving. So I think the follow-up would be to get one of them to, in
Consult.
honesty,
Explain it.
Yeah,
explain their contract in great detail, which I would probably just, I'm just not,
Well, you're
privy
not a
to
lender.
that.
Yeah.
No, right.
Well, I can't
But-
even look at the regular contracts and understand them.
Now, talking about, we kind of took a little bit of a dive there in our, as far as that certain product, but aren't there like 3 different lending
Yes.
products available if you're going strictly the Muslim banking route, right?
There is.
So there's the one that we were just talking about where basically the bank's purchasing it and it's a partnership.
Correct.
And then you're working out payments to completely pay it off until basically you've bought out that partner and now it's just you. You own that property.
Yeah, like the diminishing partnership.
In that example, is warranty deed transferred to the new owner, or is the warranty deed held in the name of the bank?
It's held in the partnership. So it's a new LLC is created,
Okay,
and the 2 of them
very
now.
interesting.
Yeah, and the amount of partnership, of course, the bank's going to have more as you pay it. Their amount becomes less, and then the individual owners becomes more, and then eventually that owner or that partner.
So there is more like an amortization
Yeah.
going on inside the LLC.
So they will say within the LLC, the individual partner is renting the property, and so that sort of offsets the word amortization.
Amortization, yes.
So I think we need to be a little bit more careful with
It's hard to
the
use
terminology.
amortization.
Yes.
However, it is a bell curve, I'm assuming, on the ownership, right? We're starting maximum down here, minimum partner or minimum buyer, maximum bank.
And then,
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
it goes like this.
Or you can
Yeah.
even, maybe make an analogy. The CEO is getting older, and the new one is coming up, and
Yeah.
so now.
Just don't use a Western banking term.
yes.
I'll tell you, there is a lot of individuals who do feel like the terminology is what's changing and not the whole concept. However, the scholars have looked at the contracts and have blessed them and said no. And again, I come back to the simple fact that if the intention of both parties is good, then I believe you will notice there's very little foreclosures that happen with the Islamic institution banks.
In Islam, this was created to protect borrowers from usurious lenders.
Yeah.
And we do have laws set, as I was saying, you know, it's 18% in the state of Texas, and you will see lenders go above that to lend on real estate, and it's absolutely shameful.
It is.
And I've seen it, and they get put on my I do not do business with these people list, which I do have that blacklist of people.
Yep. We should do a show sometime where it's just a blacklist.
Discussing what everybody did
Yeah,
to
I
get
don't know
on
if
that
we wanna do
list, whether it was to me or somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's quite painful when you think about it, because that was the whole, reason of our housing crisis, which affected us all globally. I mean, we all were affected. And I think that was one of the major reasons usury is forbidden. Riba is forbidden, but people will consider riba either just as interest or usury, one or the other. And that's why some of the individuals in the Muslim community that feel like the riba word meant usury will end up going for conventional loans that are reasonable.
Oh, I see.
Correct.
Depending on how you translate the word.
Well, I mean,
Because I have heard this argument.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation last night, and that is how some Muslims view that, is that riba means usury, so an excessive amount of interest.
correct. And I'm putting a disclaimer out there, not telling one
Not
way
a
or the
scholar.
other.
Not a scholar.
Not a scholar.
Not attorneys.
We are doing
not
we are doing-
attorneys.
Yeah, not attorneys. Not a scholar. We're just putting some guidance out there and some tips for you guys.
That's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, but you also have to understand, I mean, you've got Muslims around the globe from different cultural backgrounds, and isn't every religion scripture translated in a way where individuals see it because they're tainted with their culture, their upbringing, and so, we have problems in the name of religion because people are translating the word of God in so many different ways.
Yes.
So I'd like to just have a question. Because this is I lend money, and I'm in the mortgage world, and that's my main business.
Yep.
It's a male-dominated industry, and I know that I ran into this problem a lot, owner financing to Muslim couples and Muslim families, that I was a female doing this.
Oh.
Do you run into problems like that?
No, I actually will tell you that certain individuals, I guess if they're very Orthodox Muslims, they would prefer me to take their wives around rather than using a male realtor. So it came to my advantage in some way.
For you to take their wives around.
Yeah, and ultimately they're the individuals that are going to make the decision. Of course, the husband is going to weigh in on the decision, but in this market we got to go during the day. We got to go whenever the house is ready to go. Can't wait till he gets off at 7 o'clock from although he's working from home.
Yeah.
To get off from his job. So you're
Yes.
taking the wife around
Yeah.
to look at it. And yeah, I'm sure he probably would prefer that. So in your experience, it's actually being a woman.
Has tremendously helped in the Muslim community. Now, it does sort of.
I'm translating it to the finance side.
Right. Since I will tell you, there's always going to be some level of, behaviors that none of us females appreciate with the male. I would just have to leave it at that, and I apologize that you've had some experience, and it does exist. I'm not going to deny that, and we can just.
It
work with
exists in all cultures, by the
Yeah.
way. It's
Oh,
not
every
just.
culture.
Yeah.
We live in Texas. It's
Yeah.
a good old
And
boy
it's-
system.
yeah.
Believe me.
It exists. Yeah.
It is not just unique.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, because
Yeah.
a lot of the times when you think of a Muslim in a headscarf, like, oh my goodness, you are being forced into this. Oh no, when I joined the fellowship and I decided to cover my head, I did it because I really felt that statement that was, presented to me as, you're covering because you're remembering God, and anytime somebody looks at you, they should remember God as well. So you've done a good deed by just covering your head. And in dressing modestly is one of the practices of Islam, one of the tenets of Islam. And so it just worked out really well. Now, sadly, everybody thinks of 9/11, and that wasn't the intention of,
yes. Yeah.
of
that was
wearing a headscarf.
No, but you're an American, as you pointed out at the beginning.
I know.
And so
Yes.
you have the choice.
I absolutely have a choice. As a matter of fact, I'm a graduate of Dallas Baptist University, so go Patriots. And you know what? Orthodox Christians used to cover. Orthodox Jews still cover today. And so there are other religions that do cover their hair.
My husband's family, which is a part of Christianity, covers to this day.
And I think it's beautiful. I mean, I don't. My husband was a bit surprised because I had done it when he was on a business trip, and he comes back, he goes, "Oh, okay," and you know,
Okay.
yeah. And I said,
This
"This
is
is
new?
what I've decided." Well, see, we went to Hajj together when we were in Saudi Arabia. He was working for Cisco, and we had went back to his assignment as expats, and we got an opportunity to do Hajj in 2009, and I hadn't made that decision to cover, although I was in Saudi Arabia surrounded by individuals not only covering their hair but covering their faces. And then there's another different school of thought where, you know, you don't have to cover your face, and other school of thought within the Muslim community that you must cover. So, you know, such a
Just the
broad-
varying degree, like we mentioned earlier, it's just a varying degree. No matter what religion you're a part of, there is a varying degree of beliefs, and you know, whether you're very, very traditional or very, very conservative or a little bit more liberal, there's that pendulum swings.
Absolutely.
So getting back to the investment side of things, or the lending side of things, you have that partnership, and then what are kind of the arrangements of the other two?
Rent to own. It's known as ijara, and that's basically where the individual will have a contract with the mortgage company, and gradually they're basically, as you had mentioned,
Yeah.
sort of like an owner finance situation. They're renting to.
In Texas, it would have to be an owner finance because we don't allow rent to own. But the verbiage on that
Or
product,
contract for
the
deed.
contract, yeah.
But
yeah.
you also have to understand that's Texas.
Yeah.
But Islamic institution lending, the banking system is available around
Around
the
the
globe.
world.
Right.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I mean, and
Absolutely.
contract for deed or rent to own is extremely popular up in Michigan,
Yeah.
Dearborn.
Mm-hmm.
Subject, you know, a suburb of
Absolutely.
Detroit.
I mean,
So
yeah,
again,
every state's different here, and then globally, like you said, everybody's a little bit different. But those products are there.
Yeah, and then if it's and anything that we do in the Islamic context or laws are always followed by what's permissible in that state that they are conducting the business in. So then that particular contract or that option would not probably be available
In
to
Texas,
individuals
but
in Texas.
it would be in Michigan or wherever else. Yeah.
But the other two options.
I
would be.
mean, it's not permissible in Texas, but I do see it from time to time. They'll come up,
Yep.
they'll pop up. So I mean, again,
Yep.
differences.
so you've got the bank where they form a partnership in the form of an LLC, and that's a structured Muslim banking system. Then you also have the rent to own
Mhm.
kind of owner finance type situation, and then
And then the third one is basically you're doing a promise to pay, but on a cost plus. So you're promising to pay back, but then you're paying a little bit more, which is based on the profits, instead of calling it
Interest. It's more of a service fee. I'm providing a service, so therefore you're paying for that service.
It's a time value kind of
Gotcha.
situation.
okay.
So there are products out there. One thing I know that you do a ton of investment stuff. You know, we've been mainly talking about residential at this point, but as far as investing in with the Muslim community or putting together an LLC where all you do is invest in commercial properties, how is commercial different from residential in that sense of either gathering investors, what you promise out, you know, that sort of thing?
So my husband and I own Wazoo Capital Partners, and we do real estate syndications, and we have a couple of products in there that are Sharia compliant, and one I'll go into a little detail that we had done in the past is you'll buy a land all cash, and then you'll have the investors coming in to helping us. There's no way with today's market and money to buy a land with just one individual. So you have multiple individuals that are high net worth, that are accredited investors that will come in and help you purchase. And there's because of the SEC regulations, this is a relationship based, a lot of them, my husband's family is so large. Last time I counted, we have like 72, including him and myself. So we really don't always have to go beyond family and friends.
Yeah.
But we do have a nice amount of clientele as well. But anyhow, so for the Muslim clients that are Orthodox that have to and want to be with the Sharia compliant financing structure, the investment will be total cash. When we end up adding an additional amount in that raise altogether at one time, and we'll do the city kind of engineering and all the permits and everything. And once we get to that, then we'll dissolve the LLC, pay back all the profits to the individual investors as promised and their capital. But then 99% of the time, we're selling that LLC to another LLC that we created for maybe more of the liberal clients who do not mind a little bit of the interest involved, and then we'll go for a construction loan with a conventional loan.
So that you can borrow
So we can
with your
borrow.
less
Right. And
strict.
So we're sort of
You're
catering.
catering to both
Yes.
both communities or both aspects of things, but still getting the investment done. People are getting paid on their investment, and they know that they can come to you and trust that it's done by what they require.
The Islamic regulations, So there's absolutely no banks even involved in that. It's all cash transaction, and then that way there's like no confusion of even terminology.
Yeah.
It's all cash. So,
Gotcha.
And then there's another friend of mine, and that's why we call it Capital Partners, because there's a couple of other friends. Farouk Sheikh does one, U.S. Rio Fund is his, and he's also local in Dallas. And he has an Islamic financing institution that he works with, and so that he offers sometimes some great opportunities. Tawheed Chaudhry is a Tessacom Technologies co-founder, and he created in 2016 a real estate it's called Tessacom Real Estate Group, and I think at the current time he owns about 700 acres. He's one of my major clients, and so we will work with him to see. Right now he's creating 174 townhomes in Irving. And he pre-sold 80 of them. We have 10 more. He took $300,000 cash up front from these Orthodox Muslims, and he will be delivering them a product that's probably going to be, by the time he delivers it, $450,000 worth. So they've made an enormous amount.
50%
Nice.
on their money
Nice.
very quickly.
But they're getting nothing for 2.5 to 3 years. Because we just got an approval for the engineering accomplished to break ground. So come November, we're going to break ground. So we've got to do the infrastructure and horizontal infrastructure and then go vertical. So delivery time will probably be 18 months. So we only have 10 more. So anybody coming in now and getting it for $300,000 is actually making a better profit.
Of course.
And I think last year when we sold the other ones, I believe they were for a little bit less. So it makes up for the time value.
I would have to imagine that because terminology and contracts are so important in Islam, that there must be a lot of very good Islamic Muslim attorneys
Oh yeah,
that specify in just lending and in real estate contract law.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Salman Bajani, he's actually, I'm going to just pitch it in there, I know we're in real estate. He's running also for Congress, Texas congressional seat. And he's an amazing attorney. He's Muslim by faith. We also have another really amazing attorneys that are local, and I'm going to go blank in a minute, but they're in Irving, and Omar Suleiman's brother, and he's going to hate me when I say this because his name is just slipping my mind, and I'll come back to it in a minute and let you know. And he's an amazing Muslim attorney as well that people rely on.
But you would have to. I mean, it's not just going to in
the commercial
going to your
investment
scholar,
world, it's,
No.
or
It
going
would
to
be-
your
yeah.
elder, your
Yeah,
scholar.
yeah,
yeah.
I was
You would
stuck
want
on the wrong
somebody-
word. Going
yeah.
to your scholar, but really an attorney.
I definitely, and the fact that they'll be able to help you go through the contracts, and you have another
To
set
make
of
sure you're
eyes.
not.
Well, again, if you're going to an Islamic mortgage lending financing company, their ultimate goal is to sit there and explain all the processes to you. And their intention is not to take advantage of you. Otherwise, then it just sort of failed. And we're not any different than a conventional lender who gives you 60 pages and says, good luck.
In reality, a good lender, regardless of it,
would walk you.
is going to walk you through it,
Yeah.
and because it is a partnership. When I lend money to people, it's a partnership.
If you lose, I lose.
I
Yeah.
don't want them defaulting. If they
So true.
default,
Yeah.
then I haven't done a very good job, and I'm going to probably lose somehow on that.
Yep.
Yeah. No. That's really important, and you're one of the few amazing lenders that are honest and walk people through.
I doubt that.
But I mean, it's interesting to me, you know, the differences. I mean, whereas the differences in the residential and the commercial, they're not. It's not a huge difference, but just that with the commercial, there are opportunities there. If we're talking about you want to invest in properties, there's opportunities there where you don't have to go and break any sort of
Sharia law.
that there are opportunities there. Are there lenders, let's say you're investing and maybe it's not commercial, maybe it's residential investing, but you need that investment money. You're obviously not going to be able to go to a hard money lender. Is there that, do you know if there's that capability
There is a couple of lenders that are out there that, you know, even might help you with a business loan. But then again, that business loan would then become a partnership where they are going to be part of that business and they will have to share the profits and the losses.
Oh, I love that.
Gotcha.
So they
Okay.
can come in and they can be a 50-50 partner.
So it's almost
you
like a
can't-
JV
It's a
opportunity.
JV. It's a JV offer. I mean,
That's
it's
fantastic.
not always how I prefer to protect my investors and give a preferred payment, right, which is interest,
Yes,
so that they always get their interest payment. But hey,
that works
I'll take
too.
a 50-50 partnership.
And,
Yeah.
and that mitigates any, I mean, nothing is perfectly risk-free, but then that individual can feel a little bit more confident that they're sharing the loss and profits together.
No, I think it's good.
Ground up development, I mean, there's major, big, large developments. Sammy has done with Soho Properties, and they've used Maybank from Malaysia. And so there's some large institutional banks that are following the Islamic financing rules and regulations, and they can lend out. And, you know, there's
Large
ways,
sums.
Yeah,
Yeah.
large sums, 20, 30 million, whatnot. You
That's
need.
large.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work. All right. Well, real quick, maybe just go ahead and, if you wouldn't mind, mention a couple of the lending institutions again, so that if anybody is interested, they've got those lending institutions that are local
Yeah.
here.
Absolutely. I definitely want to mention Guidance Residential, which is in Irving. The regional manager, Mohammed Kisar, is there. I actually have an amazing lender there at Guidance Residential, Mohammed Salam, and he's actually working with a client of ours right now, which is amazing. And then you do have UIF. There is Mohsen Mandavi. He's out there, and UIF in Plano. And there is other institutions around the United States, like, you know, I think it's Lariba and some other institutions. But I definitely want to give out the shout out to the local institutions.
Yeah, the local ones. That's where we're at. And then if there's any realtors out there that are interested, feel free, because she is a realtor as well. Reach out to Zulikha. You can reach her through this YouTube channel or on Facebook, and hopefully, you know, she would definitely, not hopefully, she would definitely get back to you and give you any information that you would need.
You're welcome to send me an email at LadyZ@zforyoure.com.
Nice. zforyoure.com. Love
Yes.
It's our motto. We work for you.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you for coming on today, Zulikha. I'm so happy you agreed to do this. It's been really, really informative.
I appreciate you both letting me come on. Thank you so much. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm J. Lee Thompson with Real Estate Reformation and Texel Real Estate.
And I'm Capricorn Mortgage Investments, Kristen Gerst. Send me all of your owner finance mortgage notes to buy.
Thanks for joining us on Real Estate Divas, and thank you, Zulikha.
Thank you.
Bye.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.